Welcome to this Developer Skills Sprint session on managing user accounts and storage with BaaS. My name is Sarina Dupont. I'm a Senior Product Manager at Embarcadero Technologies. You can also follow me on Twitter at Sarina Dupont. And I'm excited to talk to you today about our backend as a service integration that we introduced in XE6. Now let's quickly review how the skills sprints work. We're going to cover the topics that we're going to discuss today, followed by about 20 minutes of technical demos, and then followed by some live Q&A at the end. Now, what does BaaS support in Route Studio XE6 mean? BaaS stands for Backend as a Service, and it provides you access to data and object storage in the cloud. It also provides support for user authentication, and that includes support for creating user accounts, authenticating users, etc. We provide built-in support for convey and parse with a common API component set. And you also get support for push notifications. So, for example, you can send push notifications just to specific users on iOS and Android, or you can set up push triggers to automatically have notifications sent out, for example, when a user adds a record to a to-do list app, for example. Now, some of the things we'll cover today: creating and validating a user account, adding user authentication via a login screen to your application, also how to manage users via the backend interface, and consuming data that you've added via the BaaS web interface, and how you can consume existing data that lives in the cloud in your mobile app. Also adding, updating, and deleting data stored in the cloud. And all the features that I will show you today are available in Route Studio XE6, as well as Delphi XE6 and C++ Builder XE6. So the first demo I'm going to show you is a BaaS account creation demo. And this demo uses the T-Convey provider component as well as the T-Backend users component. You could, of course, also use the T-Parse component. If you're using the T-Parse component, need to make sure you have signed up for the Parse account on parse.com, and then you would just select backend users and switch this to Parse provider in the drop-down menu. Now, a couple of things to look at. We have set up the backend users component, hooked it into the Convey provider component. We have created a list. So for our user interface here, what we've done is we have a T-list box that is aligned to the top. We've set a margin here on the top of 20 pixels, and that's just to ensure there's some spacing between our login screen and the top toolbar. And then we've parented two edit controls to our list box item. The first one, what we've done is we've set the text prompt to convey username, and what that tells the user when they're using your application is that they're supposed to type the username into that field, and that's a good property to leverage for input controls, is the text prompt property. And we also have a convey password text prompt that we've set on the second T-edit control. And on this particular T-edit control, we've also set the password property to true. Now we also have a T-button, and this button has an on-click event set up on it. So first we've created a variable here for the T-backend entity value. And it's backend users one.users.signup-user. And we have several parameters here. We have username.text, and that is just my first edit control. And password.text is my second edit control. And then once we've passed those values, we will show a message that says account created. Now, if that particular username and password, specifically username, already exist on the server for that backend provider that you're using, you will actually get a return value from that BaaS provider that will tell you whether or not that was successful. So what will happen is if we successfully create the user, it will tell us that the account was created. If that username already exists, then the BaaS provider will automatically serve up a dialog that will tell you that you need to select a different username. So let's have a look at the C++ version of the demo. Again, we have the same user interface set up. Let's have a look at the on-click event. We've again created a variable here for our backend entity value, and then we've set up the sign-up user event, backend users one, user sign-up user. Again, we're passing the parameters for username text and password text. And then once the user has created the account successfully, we're going to show a message dialog. It says account created. So now let's run this demo on Windows. Okay, let's sign up for an account here. Sarina test 1. Click create. It says account created. And now, of course, after the account's been created, what we could do is here on our on-click event, for example, if we were using a tab control to display the login screen on tab 1 and then navigate to additional content, we could say something like tab control 1 dot or tab control 1 active tab equals master, for example, if we then had a master detail relationship set up between two additional tabs. And I'm going to show a demo in just a minute that shows you how to do that. So let's go to our users here. I'm inside of my Kinvey account. I'm going to go to the dashboard, add-ons, core, users. And here we see my Sarina test 1 user that I just created. Now let's run this application on my iOS device. So here we see the application running on my iOS device. So I'm going to say create another account here, Sarina iOS. Hit create, and that says account created. And if we return over here to my Kinvey account, you will see that if I go back to my users, that we have now created another user called Sarina iOS. Now let's deploy this application to Android. And now we're going to mirror this application onto my Windows VM, and I'm going to try to use the same username that I just selected on iOS, and we'll see what happens here. And now Kinvey is going to tell us that the user account already exists. It says this username is already taken. Please retry your request with a different username. Okay, so now let's change this to Sarina Android. Click create. So let's go back to our users here, and you see we have Sarina Android, Sarina iOS. So both of the accounts that I'd created you can now see inside of my admin panel here, inside my Kinvey account. Now let's have a look at our meeting notes demo. Now this example leverages both the backend user component, the backend query component, and also a provider component. In this case, I'm also using Kinvey, but you could, of course, also use the tparse provider component, which is available in the tool palette. So let's have a look at how this particular application was built. So what we have here is we have a tab control, and this tab control consists of 3 tabs. This is a very popular and common design paradigm on mobile. And in this particular case, what I've done is I've set the tab position property to none. And what that allows me to do is use my tab control and the tab items that I've created as pages, so to speak. So my first one is the login screen. Then I have a second tab that is my meeting notes. That will display all the meeting notes in my list. And my third tab that will allow me to display details for that particular entry. So I'm going to first right-click and execute my query here. Okay, and I'll show you how this was set up. So a couple things. First, we need our Kinvey provider component. This component, you need to enter your app key, your app secret, your master secret, etc. Then we have our backend users component, which is connected to my Kinvey provider component. I also have a backend query component. So now let's have a look at the backend query component. You have to select a backend service. In this case, I've selected storage. We also have to select the backend class name, and then I've hooked in my provider. Now, where's that backend class name defined? So let's have a look here at data store, and you will see that I have one defined called meeting notes 1. And what I did here is, because this application consumes data that was added via the Kinvey interface, I've actually gone and created a new collection, which you can do by clicking on new inside your account here, and I've defined it as meeting notes 1. And that same meeting notes 1 is also referenced here in as my backend class name. And then I've added rows and columns. And in this case, I added a row for meeting discussion and meeting type. Now, after I've added the data, what I'm able to do in the IDE at design time here is I'm able to execute my request. You will also see that I have an FD mem table. And the FDMEM table and also the response dataset adapter are two important components that you need to also place onto your form. The FDMEM table is hooked into the REST response dataset adapter, as you can see here, by setting the dataset property to FDMEM table 1. And then we've also hooked it into the backend query 1 component. And then if you right-click after executing the query, if you right-click on FDMEM table, you look at the fields editor, you will get the columns back that are defined here inside my account. So for example, we have meeting type and meeting discussion. Those were two columns that I had originally defined. Now let's navigate back to our second tab. And you now see the data that lives in the cloud. So here I have, for example, my meeting discussions and my meeting type. And you see both of those in my list view. Now, the way that I've actually populated my list view with my data from my BaaS provider is via the Live Bindings Designer. After executing the request, I've selected the list view, text property, and bound it into meeting type. And then I've selected the detail property and bound it into meeting discussion. Now let's have a look at the list view and how that is laid out. I've selected for my item, I've selected the image list item bottom detail, and in this case I've decided to hide the image, and you can just do that by expanding that item in your tree view here and selecting image and selecting it, setting it to invisible. And that allows me to use this stacked display of my data. And then when I click it, I've also set up an on-click event for my list view, an on-change repaint event. In this case, I'm navigating to my active tab of details. So it's a master detail relationship. When I click on the master, which is the list, it then transitions to the detail view. Also in form create, what I've done is I've executed the query. So I actually ping the BaaS provider gets the data from the provider, execute that query, and I've also set the screen to login. Now let's have a look at our login screen. Login screen, the code is very similar to our sign up screen. So let me just go back here and navigate back to my login screen. Now what we have here again is we have a list box. We've set up a group header so that we can display a nice title above our login screen. It says member area. We have, of course, our username and password field. This password field will be set to password as true, so that way the type password will not be displayed in text format. And then we also have a login screen. So let's have a look at the code here for the login screen. Backend users 1, users, login user, and then you're passing the username and password. We also, of course, created that variable. So the code is very similar here between the login user and sign up user. Also, in this particular case, what we do is after the user is successfully logged in, we also navigate to the master tab. So we go from the login screen if they can log in to the master tab. Let's have a look at the C++ version. Again, the user interface is the same. The code is slightly different. Here at login, that checks users' credentials and navigates to the master tab. Again, the code is quite similar. We also, when we create the form, we execute the query and then navigate to the login form, and that ensures that we're able to launch the application with the login screen as the first screen that's visible to the user. Again, here on Change Repainted, what we do is we click the list view and then we navigate to detail. And then we also have on the back button, we go back to the master form or master tab, which is our list view. So let's run this application on my Windows machine. Okay, so I'm going to log in with my Sarina iOS account that I set up just a couple minutes ago. Okay, user logged in, and now I can see my data. I can go back, see information about upcoming meetings, etc. Now let's have a look at this on my iOS device. Okay, we have my login, so I can log in again with Sarina iOS. Login, logged in, And then you can see here that I'm seeing my list and I have that master detail relationship set up. Now let's see what the application looks like on Android. Going to connect to my Nexus 4, hit run, and I'm going to see what the app looks like on my Android device. Okay, so now I'm going to log in with my Sarina Android. Username and my password. And now it says invalid credentials because I entered the wrong account information, or my wrong password in this case. So again, it will check and make sure that you exist, and also that the login information matches what the user account details are that you previously set up. Now, another example that I wanted to show is the BaaS to-do demo. This is a sample that ships with the product, and it consists of a tab control with various tabs for list and detail, master detail. It also allows you to add records. So it has a tab item for adding and also editing existing records. And then we have a data module, and for the data module here, what we've done is we've set up backend storage. So in this particular case, because we're also writing to the database, we're editing data, we're adding data, we're updating existing data, we need the backend storage component, which is again hooked into the Kinvi provider component. And this is a demo that ships with the product, and I would highly recommend having a look at that demo. So let's summarize what we covered today and some of the resources that we have available for you to help you get started building BaaS-enabled applications. So for the samples, you can access both the C++ and Object Pascal samples in the samples directory that ships with the product. There's a BaaS to-do list demo in both of those folders available. And I've been covering various BaaS-related topics, including push triggers, push notifications, storage, user account creation, authentication, etc., on my blog. And you can find those tutorials by going to blogs.embarcadero.com/Sarina Dupont. I'm also planning on making the samples that I showed today available for future download, and I will be posting a blog post once those are available. Now, next time, this Thursday, we're doing a session on VCL Windows tablet app development, and this will show you how to build a Windows VCL tablet application for tablets such as the Surface Pro with the new VCL styles that were introduced in XE6. And you also see how you can easily talk to GPS and the accelerometer on your Windows tablet using the included VCL components, and that's on June 26th, this Thursday. Now, if you don't own XE6 yet, I would highly recommend that you download a trial so you can try yourself some of the great features that I showed you today around BaaS and working with backend as a service as part of your application development. So now we'll open it up to some live Q&A.
Jens was asking about, can you skip the message from Convey and handle the error yourself?
I'm pretty sure you can intercept it, but I'll have to check on that. I know that Kinvey and Parse both send back a message if you can't log in that automatically is displayed as part of an implementation. I do think you can show your own message, but I'll have to double check on that.
Alf is asking if he could publish messages by the owner to a database. You can do anything you want in code, including save messages off wherever you want to save them. So,
and in regards to BaaS, we do include a BaaS to-do list demo. I'm also planning on making the demos available you saw today, but we also have a to-do list demo, and that is available in the mobile samples cloud BaaS subfolder for both C++ and also Delphi. And you can download that, and that particular demo does a variety of things. It queries the BaaS provider for existing data on the server. It also allows you to add, insert, update, delete items. It's a really great demo to have a look at.
What can you put in a backend storage? Can you put pictures and other things?
Yes, I actually just did a blog post a couple days ago on how to upload images to BaaS. And that is on my blog at blogs.embarcadero.com/Sarina Dupont. And if you have a look at that, I think it's my most recent blog post.
There's also a backend file where you can upload just arbitrary files. Right?
Yeah, this particular example I'm using backend files, and it actually will show up in your Kinvey account or Parse account under files. And then it will, this particular demo I created will also display the URL of your uploaded file in an edit control, and then you can use that URL, and it's publicly accessible unless you change your settings, and then you can view that image online. There's many parts to when you're building a BaaS-enabled app. You basically need three parts. You need your master secret, your app secret, and your app key, and unless you have all of those, it will be very difficult for somebody to do anything with them.
And Rob was asking about update object, update data storage, not just create one, and you do that in your to-do list extended app, right?
Yes, the to-do list demo that ships with the product, that you can find it on the Mobile Samples cloud, has all those features or functions exposed, so you can have a look at that one. Yeah, and also BaaS requires OpenSSL, so if you're building an application, in some cases you need to download those libraries if they don't exist on your device. Like in the case of Android, they do, but if you look at the BaaS to-do list demo, we actually have in the README, we list the links where you can access those files and download them yourself.
James is asking, are there facilities to reset passwords? I go through the convey and parse, the convey console, web console. I'm not sure if we surface a way to replace. I guess you could read through each user because the users list is a storage class. Mm-hmm. And do something to the password. There
are email templates and things like that you can set up inside the Convey account. For example, you could set up an email template once a user is signed up for an account. You can set up a template that will send that user, for example, a welcome message that says, thank you for signing up for my app, for example, and then you would add the name of your application. I do think there's a way to do that for reset too. I can explore that though for an upcoming blog post. That's a good idea for me to look into.
Mirko is asking, I'm new to the BaaS concept. Are convey parse intended to be used just to store users and push notifications, or do you suggest using for complete database servers?
Well, it can be used for many different purposes. It's a big advantage in regards to having your data stored in the cloud, being able to access and maintain your database in the cloud versus it just depends on your type of application. In a lot of cases, you might want to have a local embedded database, for example, like our IB2Go or SQLite. In other cases, you want to have a remote database. In the case of BaaS, it really allows you to easily implement database functionality and also leverage features such as push notifications. So, for example, I'll give you a good example of when you might want to use it in your mobile application when you want to leverage storage. So let's say you have an application that is a recipes application or a corporate meeting notes application or some type of human resources application, and you're updating records, you're making changes. You can actually use a functionality called push triggers that will automatically send a push notification to all application users that will tell them once that application has been updated. So that's a really great feature to leverage. So for example, you have a team that's working on features for the next product and they're all using the same application. Once team member A updates that application, all the other team members could receive a notification that says team member A would insert the team member's name has updated, and then you can put in the record name. And that's a really great way for you to add also user engagement and interactivity to your application.
It's your choice how much you want to use. You might just want it for push notification server because you don't want to have to create your own server and put it somewhere and to be able to push information out to iOS and Android devices.
Yeah, and if you're using it for, let's say, user authentication combined with push notifications, then you can say, I want to send a push notification just to a specific user. You can do all that via the web interface.
So the question here is if your password can be blank, or I guess it could extend that, are there rules about what the password can be, and can you modify those rules?
So I know that if you're signing up for an account, I believe that the password can't be blank when you're signing up for an account. Although I'd have to double check on that. I think that's always a requirement. I don't know if that's vendor specific. Each of the vendors may have their own requirements in regards to the length of passwords. I don't know, David, do you know if there's...
As far as I know, you have to give it a password for a user.
Mm-hmm.
But we can
look
try
into
it
that.
and then post a blog.
What if the user forgets their password? So there are inside of the BaaS provider accounts, there are actual email templates that you can set up, and there are email templates you can set up, for example, when a user has signed up for an account inside your application, so you can send them an automatic reply saying thank you for signing up. I believe there's also a reset password link that can be generated that you could add to your application. I haven't tried that myself, but it is definitely something I can look into for a future blog post.
So Kinv allows free setup and allows developers to work with their products up to 100 users. Is there a way to see how many users you have?
Use the control panel in the web.
Yeah, you can go to inside your Kinv account, like where we were looking at users during the presentation. You can see the number of users that are registered inside that account.
Also, you could write a Object Pascal or C++ program, because the users is just another storage class, and you could do a not SQL, but do a query and count the number that you have.
And I also recently did a blog post on sending push notifications, for example, from an existing app, and that can be a VCL app or a FireMonkey application that you could write on the desktop as a client application to be able to send those push notifications. And I think David I covered that in his webinar, and I think even in the skill sprint recently.
Would the BaaS components work well for a desktop application for enterprise client management app, or would it be too limited?
Yeah, they could definitely work well for that. It's not just limited to mobile at all. It's a backend as a service. It can be used in your mobile application or in your desktop applications. You have a full interface on the web through both of those providers, Kinv and Parse, where you can get analytics, see how many API calls people are making or are being made with your application. You can access user management. You can delete records either via the app or through that backend interface. So it's very flexible and extensible.
Yeah, except for receiving push notifications. We don't support receiving push notifications for desktop. Currently.
Yeah, that is currently a mobile feature. Yeah. So for push notifications, and they're really the most common around iOS and Android.
Are there extra features in Enterprise versus Pro concerning BaaS? All this BaaS stuff.
Of course, Pro does not have mobile unless you buy the mobile add-on pack.
Right.
So if you want to do mobile development using BaaS, you would need to purchase the add-on pack for Pro.
Mobile.
Or Rad Studio comes with mobile add-on pack, though, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, Rad Studio Pro. Yep. Is there support for advanced BaaS data types like pointers, relationships? We don't have pre-built components for some of the additional capabilities for parsing Kinv, but you can go to their documentation. They have REST interfaces, so you can use the REST client components in conjunction. And there's things like relations that you can do. You can also, of course, iterate through any storage class, including users. Somebody asked earlier, can I count the number of users? Can I get a list of users? Users, just another storage class, just like storage classes that you would create yourself. But you can always use the REST APIs. Clive asked a question about demos with Facebook, Twitter, Google, login prompts, or so on. There's a couple ways to do that. In October, it was November. In November, there was a webinar. It's in the RAD in Action list. November, about getting connected to your enterprise infrastructure or to certain cloud systems. But one of the demos used the REST client components, support for OAuth and OAuth 2 to connect to Facebook. So you can check out that. It's the RAD in Action. It was in the month of November of 2013. Another thing to explore is there's a set of components that TMS software has, which is a whole set of cloud components for logins to all sorts of different cloud-based systems, Twitter, Dropbox, Facebook, and so on. So check out the TMS software cloud components for Delphi and for C++ Builder. So that's a good place to, if you need to connect to a whole bunch of different social and or enterprise or internet infrastructure pieces. These components are specifically related and connected to backend as a service providers. We started with Parse and Kinv. And JT, I know there's many other backend as a service providers that do similar things with storage, users, push notifications, and so on. And It's not for us to announce some of those people, but there's others working on. And there's a custom provider class. So if you have some system you want to connect to that provides a REST interface and does some of this backend as a service type functionality that is embodied in the components that we have, you can create your own custom provider by using it. It's T-Custom Provider, I think, is the base class. But go into the help or the doc wiki, look at T-Parse Provider, T-Convey Provider, and then you'll see the class they inherit from. And the source code is there if you have the Enterprise and above, or you have Rad Studio, which includes Mobile Pack, or you have the mobile add-on. So you can look and see how some of this works under the covers. I think, right?
Definitely. Yeah, like you said, there's extensibility. At the end of the day, there's always REST APIs, and it's a very complete REST client framework. Anything that exposes a REST API you can work with, whether or not we have pre-built components. So first thing to look for is that REST API, and use the REST client and response and request components to interact with them.